We are sorry for a little delay. We had slightly technical problems. And I would like to welcome you to the session Music in Sarajevo Under the Siege 1990-1995. I am Professor Sarina Bakić from University of Sarajevo, Faculty of Political Science from the Department of Sociology, and it's my great pleasure to moderate this session tonight. Let me just tell you briefly an introduction remarks regarding the title of this session. As uncertainties of 21st century risk society blowout, we are confronted with trying questions and choices, and very few answers and options. Suddenly, terms like art of living, adaptation to alteration, role of culture, particular the role of art, and freedom from distress are high on the global outline today. Given that Sarajevo residents tried and tested those questions some 30 years ago, the main objective of this panel is to present our panelists' authentic research results, their thoughts and ideas on various aspects of music within the Sarajevo siege in the period of 92-95. The siege of Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia-Herzegovina, was the longest siege of a capital city in the history of modern history of wars, 1,335 days. It's my great pleasure to invite our first panelist, Amila Ramović, with her expose titled Accounting for the Sources on Music in the Besieged Sarajevo. What is at stake? Please, Amila.
Thank you, Professor Bakić, and thank you, everybody, for your patience in resolving the slight technical issues we've had. I have to say, the original idea actually was that within this symposium, which is happening 30 years from the beginning of the siege of Sarajevo, we would have a, let's say, a thematic panel, maybe a series of sessions that would be dedicated to the issue of the music under the siege. However, as I will explain in this paper, that was not possible. And somehow, this discussion that I will try to open today, and I hope only open it, is therefore on one hand addressed to all of us to give an impetus to provoke the possible new research and discussions about this very important topic. And on the other hand, somehow I'm addressing it to our friends from all over the world who are part of this symposium, who will not have known already a lot of the issues that I will mention today. So for the local colleagues, I asked them for some patience, because I will also try to give a little bit more context about the siege and who we are, and what is the general situation that I'm addressing. And I hope it will be informative for our colleague abroad. But somehow, anyway, as you will see, the presentation will be formed more in a form of question than a series of actually results of an empirical research. So anyway, what was the key question? So we're talking about the siege of Sarajevo, and I have to say, I was actually a couple of years ago. There was a intercongressional symposium at the IMS in Lucerne, and I was preparing a presentation about the purpose, the function of music during the siege of Sarajevo. And I thought it would be the easiest topic to do, because we had all sources everywhere around us. And as I just commented with Petra yesterday, we thought that it's the easiest topic to write about. However, when I looked for the actual sources, they were not there. Suddenly, just finishing the paper became a challenge and a little bit stressful endeavor. And this is why this topic is arising today, and this is why I'm opening it for this symposium and for the Musicological Society. And how to even start this discussion for this meeting? It was my dilemma. Should I start it with this, you know, with our general story, you know? At the end of the 20th century, the city of Sarajevo was besieged for almost 4 years, with 350,000 Sarajevans besieged and 11,541 died, the longest siege in modern history, as Sarina just said. This is the starting frame of the documentary film The Siege, which was made by war reporter and founder of the Warm Foundation in Sarajevo, Rimi Uhdan, in 2016. And in this presentation, you will find other clips actually from this film, because it's a very good repository of some of the oral histories relating to the siege. Or another slide, this one. I like this slide. Maybe you don't see very well. I think the image is not so good. Can you see what is written on the wall? You can see, I cannot see. It's a little bit of iconography, musical iconography of war. This was for Zdravko and Daniela and friends. But this was a photo by Bosnian photographer Kemal Hadžić, shot sometime during the siege in Titova Street in downtown Sarajevo. And this concrete wall that you can see now was one of the innumerable barriers protecting the citizens from the snipers spraying at them from the hilltops. But this intervention, the graffiti stating Pink Floyd, which is of course referring to The Wall, the most famous album by Pink Floyd, and as a teacher, I feel that this remark is useful actually for this younger audience, which might not know that. Anyway, this intervention, this graffiti, has managed to reconfigure the meaning of the concrete wall into a site of expression. By appropriating the wall, the anonymous author had added a new meaning to the wall, and this new meaning now had a primary position. A small step, but the micro-situation was not anymore defined by the aggression, but by the expression instead. So the two perspectives, the two slides that I showed, are the two defining points for this research, and then for this presentation entitled Accounting for the Sources in Sarajevo, in the Besieged Sarajevo, What is at Stake? Or, as at this point, I would add a report on a project at a very, very early stage. So it is a well-known fact that despite constant shelling and sniper fire, and despite continuous lack of electricity, water, heating, food, and medical supplies, besieged Sarajevo was a site of an intense artistic production. Over 170 exhibitions, 180 theater productions, and over 2,000 recorded, so Čavlović says, concerts were staged, and most of them were very well attended or attended to the full capacity. Such events have commonly been described as cultural resistance. But we could say that maybe risking life to witness art requests us to find a more meaningful vocabulary in order to convey the depth of these experiences at personal and social levels. And that is the initial point that had propelled this research. So today in this brief presentation, I will mostly abstain from theory and interpretation and thus present the case for a wider research project that I will talk about through 2 points. In the first part here, I will, which is already halfway there, or I'll run through it. But in this first part of the talk, I will illustrate our research subject. And for the reason of brevity and quickly reaching the point, it will be consisted of fragments of interviews made with important producers of the artistic life under the siege. And the origin of these video clips actually will come mostly from this documentary, The Siege, along with other sources listed in the end. But also, you will note that I will abstain from my commentary, so I would say that we will have about 5 minutes of these clips. And in the second part of this talk, I will tend to present the information relating to my past and hopefully future research, but not only mine, also of a group of researchers that I hope will join in Sarajevo and beyond to share the information about the current state of the information, about our research and its future, and to kind of map the following steps.
Ce matin dans
We
Sarajevo,
walk
alors que
today
les
in
bombes
this street.
continuent de tomber, ponctuellement les plus hardis commencent à sortir des abris.
We're not
Dans la
200
vieille
meters
ville,
from
le
here.
quartier le plus durement touché, quelques maisons flambent encore. Un pompier qui se bat depuis 23 heures hier est assis sur les marches de la bibliothèque en feu. Il regarde sa lampe à eau dépitée, plus d'une goutte. Les canalisations ont peut-être sauté. Les livres, la mémoire de Sarajevo partent en fumée. Vision de fin du monde ce matin dans la capitale bosniaque. Des maisons éventrées, des rues couvertes de gravats. Un vieil homme assis sur un banc dans un square pleure. Sa ville est en...
Taj fenomen gubitka civilizacije i uspostavljanja nove fascinirao. Ja lično nemam inteligenciju opstanka razvijenu u smislu da znam da napravim bilo šta kao što su drugi ljudi radili, znači da pravim te peći, da tražim mogućnosti da struju. Tako da, u stvari, mi smo bili jedan veliki eksperiment. Nenamjerno, nije bila namjera da grad bude eksperiment, bile su druge političko-vojno-strateške namjere, ali se u stvari desilo da smo mi, da imamo veliko istraživanje o tome kako čovjek može da opstane mentalno pod terorom 4 godine puta 24 sata.
Ljudsko biće, zaista imate potrebu za nadgradnjom, imate potrebu da u takvim teškim vremenima preživite ne samo fizički, nego i psihički, odnosno mentalno. Tako da počinje i taj jedan paralelni život. Nije se više moglo nakon 3 mjeseca samo skrivati i biti u podrumu ili na liniji. Ljudi su počeli da rade i čak i rizikujući svoje živote.
Bez obzira da li si sa puškom u ruci na frontu ili si tinejdžer koji ne zna šta će od sebe u opkoljenom gradu, ono bitno je bila taj mentalni otpor koji smo svi spružali i taj otpor je ključan u takvim situacijama.
To one another, short of breath, walking proudly in our winter coats, wearing smells from laboratories, facing a dying nation.
Ponekad su dolazili na probu neki naši prijatelji koji su bili na linijama, koji su bili, branili su grad, puškom. A neki od njih su bili dolazili na naše probe. Ja sam jedanput ih pitao kako to njima izgleda. Pitao sam se da li oni misle da je to kao mi nešto, kao sad nešto radimo, pozorište, neku umjetnost, a oni gore bukvalno svojim tijelom brane grad. I znam da su mi tada rekli Pa vi kad ne biste ovo radili, mi ne bismo imali šta braniti.
So, after allowing the sources to speak, I will now briefly take over with noting some of the main points relating to this research, part of which was actually done during the last couple of years in Budapest at the Open Society Archive of the Central European University in Budapest within the Visegrad Fellowship, which helped me a lot with formulating some of the issues relating to what I'm presenting. And finally, all of this project is working with the hypothesis that the documentation of the artistic practice in Sarajevo under the siege and the musical practice in particular, where in the bottom line producing and consuming arts meant willingly risking one's life, can serve as an important deposit of collective memory and a source of knowledge to slightly and significantly, sorry, not slightly, but significantly enhance our understanding of the social-cultural aspects of the war. But what happened? Carrying out this particular study became a trick project because paradoxically, even though artistic life during the Sarajevo siege was documented to a large degree, many records of important events are missing or are unavailable, are incomplete or even inaccurate. Furthermore, there has been no substantial attempt to retrieve them. One of the reasons was that both the subjects and potentially primary sources, producers and witnesses were active for decades after the war. So the discourse about the war is still very present in the public life, and the general feeling is that all information is just anywhere lying around, and that we know what happened and who did it, and we always know somebody who has the right information or can tell a story. And therefore, until now, there has been a general lack of interest and no sense of urgency among those who could have undertaken such research. Exceptions included, primarily they apply to the Fama collection, which is a private initiative of Vlada Kapić and a small group of associates who started to create the collection even during the war, the final purpose of which the creation of the Fund for the Future Museum of the Siege. And also, the resources in post-war Bosnia were and still are insufficient in both financial and academic terms. And furthermore, I have to say that international grants that were kind of happening around Bosnia for many years after the war were not kind and generous to promote the projects relating to the memory of war. Namely, they are very prone to promoting the memory of forgetting. Often, fake attempts of reconciliation through erasing history, and the best example of which I have to mention always is the renovation of our National Library, the City Hall, which was returned to its original 1894 condition without a chance for it to seriously commemorate the events of the siege, which was the initiative of the cultural and academic workers. And you can all go and see Vijećnica, which for me is one of the most painful sites now in Sarajevo, as it was painful during the war, because the international community literally paid 30 million euros to erase the traces of what happened in this building. And then the people were cheering. They said, okay, we have wonderful new Vijećnica, forgetting thus that actually the main issues of its history, the main issue about its history was actually erased from it, and we allowed it. And so therefore, even the material doesn't really exist and has not been properly documented, analyzed, or published. We are today facing the urgency to act because most Bosnian scholars and researchers are actual witnesses, and the immediacy of their memory is still acute. At this juncture, research in war memory is critical because every day we witness the protagonists that age and die. Many sources were already lost, oral histories were not recorded, documentation has not been apprehended. And under these conditions, we are losing the advantage of the immediacy of their memory. The memory slowly ceases to be individual, thus becoming increasingly collective, thus mediated, interpreted, and we could expect more and more inaccurately. I myself know that that we have already starting to think about this issue much more, I would say, intensely than before. And for example, in the Musicological Society, we have already launched a group research project that will, in the coming years, deal with documentation of musical life in Bosnia and Herzegovina during the war. And this proposal was that we adopted in our board was the Music Under the Siege, Culture and Memory in the Documentation of the Musical Life in Sarajevo 92-95, which should be part of the overall project Fundamental Research for the History of Music in Bosnia and Herzegovina, launched in the 90s by the Professor Ivan Čavlović with Professor Ankica Petrović. Hopefully in collaboration with Academy of Music, Institute for Musicology and other institutions, and hopefully to be finished in the coming years, with the goal of collecting primary sources through oral histories, artifacts, recordings, scores, etc., collecting secondary sources, completing bibliographies and libraries, which we do not have. Goals beside those will include final outputs in forms of online databases, publications, video archive, and an exhibition. In this place, we should discuss about numerous problems that we will leave for another occasion, but they will be, we have dilemmas about methodology, premises, finances, many other issues. The time is chasing us, or we are chasing it. And as you can imagine, this is a pressing issue. But however, what I can say in the final words, that historiographic processing of the music in besieged Sarajevo is still in its initial stages, and as such, it still triggers many epistemological dilemmas in line with the great responsibility and particular twofold roles of researchers as both sources and investigators. And however, as the project is pressed by urgency, this initial stage must be concluded soon, the methodology and infrastructure defined, and productive stages need to be carried out. Those will focus primarily on primary sources, producers and witnesses of those practices, but also original researchers who themselves are primary sources and have executed substantial research with the existing data in some of the known collections. The project is long-term, but the research capacity is realistically mid-term, which is why establishing these sources and directions is crucially important in this stage. So, in this work, we have to say we are grateful for those who have already done work during the war and after, and in particular, the only two academic more substantial works that will be presented today, one by Aida Ađović and the other by Petra Hamer, that will hopefully just be the first in this line of work. I'm sorry that I took so much of your time, but I thought that somehow it was needed for you to inform you that this is an endeavor that we are embarking 30 years late, but 30 years young. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ramović. It's difficult to be moderator and for all of us to sit here who spent our part of our lives under the siege as well. Professor Ramović, I have planned as a moderator, while everything is fresh, that we actually after each expose discuss a little bit. And I would like to ask you kindly if you can start the discussion. Some questions to Professor Ramović will be welcome now, and then we can start expose by expose to be in sort of a way fresh for the discussion, so you don't forget what you wanted to ask maybe or comment. Please free to join us.
While we are setting up the other presentation.
Yes, we have already a question or a comment.
Sad radi. Ja ću, dozvolite da se obratim na bosanskom jeziku, zato što sam jako emotivna nakon ovog što smo od Amile čuli. Ja sam jedna od onih koja je proživjela rat u Sarajevu I sve sam ovo doživjela na svoj jedan poseban način, naravno u nekoj ranoj mladosti, ja ću tako reći. Nisam bila tinejdžer. Zaista ovo je problematika koja vrijedi da se istraži. I ovo je zaista jedan od ciljeva muzikološkog društva, evo to znamo, zadnjih 4 godine je to jedan od programskih ciljeva i nadam se da će ovo doći do kraja. Koliko se može istražiti vidjet ćemo i ovom prilikom i zahvaljujem se i nadam se da nećemo stati na ovome, nego da će se to zaista što bolje istražiti. Zato što je to za nas sve vrlo važno, jer ovdje vidim ljude koji su bili ljudi. Dakle, nije bilo bitno kako se ko zove, odakle je ko, šta je šta i tako dalje, nego smo se dijelili na ljude i ne ljude, isključivo. I samo da kažem da je u tom periodu, iako je ovo sad jedna druga sfera, obrazovanje u pitanju, 1994. su izdati i prvi udžbenici, između ostalog, i udžbenici muzičke, odnosno glazbene kulture, što je za nas isto tako jednako važno. I u tim udžbenicima, u programskim sadržajima, dakle, po prvi put u slobodnoj Bosni i Hercegovini, u samostalnoj državi, bio je jedan značajan procenat bosansko-hercegovačkih sadržaja, muzičkih sadržaja, za razliku od prethodnih udžbenika koje smo mi koristili, a koji su nekako bili napisani i ispunjeni uglavnom sadržajima iz drugih tadašnjih republika zajedničke države Jugoslavije. Evo, ja ću samo toliko i nadam se da će biti još sličnih istraživanja. Hvala najljepša.
Thank you very much. Just in English briefly, this was Professor Merima Čaušević, a board member of association, yes, Musicology Association. Briefly, as most of us and our colleague Čaušević was very excited emotionally with this expose of Professor Ramović and encouraged the further work of what Professor Ramović is attending to do within the researching music under the siege. Maybe Professor Ramović, you have some additional comment, something to say?
Not necessarily. I think we can. We have had this understanding in our board meetings, and somehow there is a conversation to be held over the years.
Yes, I'm next.
Thank you.
Another witness of everything. Yes, I just want to express my huge gratitude to opening this topic, which is still very painful for all of us, but still, and yet so important that I think this is one of our major tasks, to document what has been done and what has been going on in those years. But I just want to share some of my experiences in working in documenting this topic. Recently I was working as a researcher for one documentary film, also about music within the siege. And one of the main problems for me was to face unwillingness of witnesses to speak about, because this is still so fresh. And we have this abbreviation PTSD or PTSP, which we still, all of us suffer. So I think this could be also one of the issues that we need to count on. And I think that very sensitive psychological approach should be also input in this topic, if you agree.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah, Vesna Andrej Zajmović, also one of the founders of the Musicological Society, a musicologist, a music journalist, editor, music critic, a very important person for us. Absolutely, Vesna. This is all lot of issues which we are not addressing, because one of the main reasons is because there's just a handful of us to do all the work that there is to be done, and somehow this one has not appeared urgent because it was always around. And now when you say the issues are still fresh, but it's 30 years ago. For me, they are fresh. I can't believe it's been 30 years. And and we were talking about how what defines us as human beings is our memory, and everything that we are actually is just our memory, and the most important things from our memory are the most important things that are always with us, and somehow this experience is permanently with us. So So it's very fresh. Should we go on with the others?
Thank you very much, Professor Ramović. And I would like to ask you, after the second expose, for the participants who would like to ask the question or give us a comment, please introduce yourself, because it's also a way for us to know each other better. It is my pleasure to invite Petra Hamer. I'm personally very eager to hear the results from her PhD thesis results. Discourse analysis of patriotic songs produced during the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina between 92 and 95. Dear Petra, please, you can start.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the introduction. Today, I would like to share with you some thoughts and ideas and the results of my PhD project that I have been working on in the last couple of years. In general, my research in Bosnian and Herzegovinian patriotic music started in 2011 when I was here at the Music Academy as a visiting student. And yeah, the interest is still going on. So what you see on the first slide are just some of the most known images related to the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And the images of destruction, suffering, and death were so present in the media that we, the outside observers, simply got used to them. I must stress that this was just one side of the war, and specific segments of it were not so visible at the first sight. For example, the role of culture and music during the war. Of course, music has many functions, and leading anthropologist Alan Merriam defined 10 basic functions in 1964, while decades later, in 1998, ethnomusicologist Svanibor Petan elaborated 3 functions. Based on my research on popular music in Sarajevo under the siege, I elaborated 2 basic functions: that music was used as resistance and as cure. There are, of course, numerous books describing, analyzing, and interpreting the war in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Some of them you can see on the slide. And some scholars did research cultural life during the war. For example, Nikolaj Jeffs, Ivan Čavlović, Mirjana Laušević, and Larisa Krtović, who all illustrated either official or alternative music scene in Sarajevo, leaving other Bosnian and Herzegovinian cities out. Additionally, Noban was researching music production of the Bosnian and Herzegovinian army. My thesis research question is how cultural production in multi-ethnic societies constructed national identity in times of war. To what extent political authorities supported this production, and how local people negotiated the official narrative with their own memories and experiences. So I found answers to those questions through a case study where I explored the production of patriotic songs produced by the 1st and the 3rd Corps artistic unit of the Bosnia-Herzegovinian army in the period between 1992 and 1995. In the thesis, I presented personal stories of my interviewees, and interestingly, I had no problems finding them because everybody really wanted to talk with me about this period. I interviewed high-ranked army generals, soldiers, popular singers, composers, journalists, professors, and regular people with different national and religious backgrounds. Other methodological approaches were data gathering in their archives and online, and discourse analysis of songs' lyrics. In-depth interviews and data gathering offered historical and social contextualization of the song's lyrics. As a response to the situation in which Bosnia and Herzegovina found itself on April 6, 1992, the Bosnian Herzegovinian president of the presidency, Alija Izetbegović, ordered the formation of the defense force. The official date of Army's foundation or formation was April 15, 1992, and the army consisted of 7 corps based on regional division: Sarajevo, Tuzla, Zenica, Mostar, Bihać, Konjic, and Travnik. Each corps had its own directorate and offices for moral questions, informative propaganda activities, and religious questions, responsible for the motivation and encouragement of soldiers on the battlefield. They organized artists who volunteer for the army into artistic units, or in Bosnian, umjetnička četa. On the slide, you can see some basic facts about both units. The first corps artistic unit was established in 1992, and among its approximately 300 members throughout the war, there were many popular Sarajevan singers, like Hanka Paldum, Dino Merlin, Hasiba Agić, Ljubica Berak, Davorin Popović, Naziv Gliva, and others. They performed in Sarajevo and on territory under the authority of the Bosnian and Herzegovinian army. Then the number of members varied throughout the war because some, like Dino Merlin or Naziv Gliva, left Sarajevo. The artistic unit was organized into 5 sections: artist painters, folk group, pop group, actors, and military orchestra. Their main task was to perform for soldiers and civilians and to boost morale. Members belonged to different national and religious groups. Third corps artistic unit was slightly smaller. It had 30 members and was divided into theater and music detachment. My interviewees from Zenica emphasized the importance of individual self-initiative, which they interpreted as real patriotism. Even more, emphasizing the fact that no one left the unit, although there were possibilities to do that, art unit's members saw as a noble and brave action. The group recorded 2 audio cassettes, while the first corps artistic unit recorded only 1. And they even made a tour in Germany and in the Netherlands, raising money for the army. Same as in Sarajevo, members belonged to different national and religious groups, but were predominantly Bosnian Muslims. So altogether, I analyzed 59 songs from those 3 audio cassettes, and I classified them into 7 categories that you see in the chart. 23 songs were singing about Bosnian and Herzegovinian army, and this category has 4 subcategories. Army in general, army units, heroes, and heroines. 15 songs were singing about the homeland, about Bosnia and Herzegovina, 11 about cities and monuments, 1 about peace, 6 were traditional songs of Dalinka, 1 was sung in English, and 2 songs sang about love. Of course, those categories and themes were often intertwined, and in one song, several themes were noticeable. This disproportion in the numbers of songs in each category is also a reflection of the fact that artistic units members paid more attention to the soldiers and their well-being and did not deal so much with the external image of the country. So this also explains the lower number of songs in English. So that I will not just speak, I want to play you some music example of different music genres so that you will hear how rich and diverse music production in Sarajevo and Zenica was. The first song that you will hear is titled Cijela Bosna, the whole Bosnia, and it sings about the geographical position of Bosnia-Herzegovina, mentioning the major rivers, Drina, Una, Sava, all border rivers, separating the territory of Bosnia-Herzegovina from Croatia and Serbia. This song was composed by the artistic units from Zenica. just wanted to give you a brief feeling. The song is performed in a moderate tempo and intense emotional melody, and the lyrics addresses all inhabitants of Bosnia-Herzegovina with their regional names, so Bosnians, Herzegovinians, and then additionally their local names like Tuzlanci, Zeničanci, Mostarci, emphasizing the feeling of togetherness and community. In the chorus, they're all referring to as defenders of Bosnia, regardless of their national and religious affiliation. The interviewees told me that this song is was composed in a Sevdalinka style, and what I realized during the war that although Sevdalinka is traditionally a song about love in like the most broader sense, what happened during the war was that newly composed Sevdalinkas were laden with patriotic feelings addressing war-related topic. So this rebirth transformed Sevdalinka into a patriotic songs. And although Sevdalinka is a music genre known all over the Balkan Peninsula, it became associated exclusively with Muslim tradition and consequently with Bosniak national identity during the war. So the next music example is also from Zenica. Nek u Bosni ljubav živi, let love live in Bosnia. So I assume it's just...
Od Kulina bana pa do ovih dana Bosna liječi, Bosna pamti Bosna traje, Bosna pamti Sve strahote, oluje i ljepote Ali Bosna, taj čelik si
So this song was made in a band 8 style with typical rock and roll music instruments and elements. The guitar solo that we did not hear, but it's reminiscent to Western pop rock music. And the lyrics express the persistence of the nation, which is a characteristic for the myth of ethnogenesis and antiquity. When mentioning the Kulin Ban and the establishment of the medieval Bosnian state, the lyrics emphasize the foreverness of Bosnian state, its historical existence, which is meant to legitimize the land's sovereignty and independence. Furthermore, the lyrics emphasize patriotic feelings of people living in Bosnia-Herzegovina and set the fundamentals for the historical myth of the 1,000-year-old nations that both Croatia and Serbia were also using to assert their rights over Bosnian and Herzegovinian land. The last example I want to play you is from YouTube, and there's also a video, but I do warn you that the quality is quite bad because it was made during the war. And it's a song, Bosna je majka moja, Bosnia is my mother, performed by Hanka Paldum.
Što je toplo sunce zemlji, što je čedo svakoj ženi, što čovjeku život znači, to je isto Bosna meni. Što čovjeku život znači, to je isto Bosna.
So Hanka was actually singing that Bosnians are all Muslims, Serbs, Croats who live in Bosnia-Herzegovina and are friends to each other. So this narrative in Paldum's songs was definitely not the same as the official Bosniak political narrative that actually excluded Serbs and Croats because of their religion. Definition of ethnicity, nation, national identity, and patriotism are all negotiated, and they point to the political and ideological circumstances through which also we scholars understand them. The analysis showed that Bosnian and Herzegovinian patriotic songs that I analyzed were not insulting other nations or expressing hate, as it was the case in some Serbian songs. They refer to Bosnia and Herzegovina as their homeland, using different metaphors, explaining this was the place where different nations lived in peace and harmony for centuries. In the song's national category of Bosnians and Herzegovinian was mentioned, never Bosniak, which can also be understood as the fact that the new term introduced in 1993 was not yet been received among the people. The use of the category of Bosnians and Herzegovinians was also important because Bosniak government wanted to prove themselves as an integrated part of European community where there was no room for extreme religious groups. This points to contradictions as the political dominant elite on the one hand promoted Bosniak national identity and introduced Islam in the army and in everyday life during the war, while on the other hand wanted to be recognized as part of Europe. My interviewees all confirmed that ideas of official politics did not always go along with ideas of Bosnian-Herzegovinian inhabitants who, for example, fought against Islamization and nationalization of society. There are many cultural events proving and emphasizing Bosnian-Herzegovinian society is multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multi-religious. One interviewee said, I quote, "Bosnia is a country of Bosnians and Herzegovinians who belong to different religions, but religion should not interfere in multicultural society and politics," end of quote. Patriotic songs did help construct national identity, but again, not Bosniak, but Bosnian and Herzegovinian. The only two examples I found describing the Bosniak national identity were songs about Shahidi, Muslim fallen soldiers, using words of Arabic origin, pointing to the Ottoman legacy and with it the Muslim religion. In the thesis, I wanted to show that various music forms accompany us always and everywhere in different social, cultural contexts and historical timeframes. However, the case studies show music has the power to affect individuals and to address them in many different ways, both in positive and negative. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Petra, for this interesting presentation of the results of your PhD thesis results. And I would like one more time to invite you to ask Petra something about her research. And I also would like to have a question. May I do first, Professor Ramović, as a moderator?
You're the boss of this session. You ask for no permission.
Thank you. Just to ask you, why this topic?
That was my question. Why on earth this topic was actually my question.
I'm sure everybody's curious about that. The fact was that when I started researching Sarajevan popular music was in 2011 because I saw a theater play, Iz Principa, out of Princip. And I wanted to see the city where Gavrilo Princip did what he did. And later on, after diving deeper into the research, I realized that there are no studies made about that. There isn't any written material. And because I'm an anthropologist and I really love doing interviews, it was a great opportunity for me to do interviews with people. And why I chose Bosnian and Herzegovinian artistic units was also because of the fact that nobody has done a research about them, and I had the opportunity to meet a person who was actually an employee in the army in Zenica, and he gave me the additional information about the work of artistic units. And later on, as the research went on, the snowball effect happened. I met more and more people who were actually artistic units members, although in the everyday life or in the general war discourse in Bosnia and Herzegovina, those artistic units were like left behind or forgotten. And I think that my PhD, that will be a book soon, will be a great contribution to the understanding and appreciation of music and culture during the war.
Thank you very much.
I will give this floor to. I just want to try to Timur. Was Timur first or somebody else? I don't know. Artistic unit is umjetnička četa, for those who don't know what it is, and members of some of those are here with us today.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm really looking forward to reading your book too. If you allow me 2 short questions. The first one would be, could you tell us some more about the music itself? Because you concentrate a lot about the lyrics and everything, but what about the music? Like, especially like the origins of it. Is it like the stuff that was kind of reused, or is it basically stemming from the artists themselves, or especially because we heard like a Sevdalinka kind and a pop kind of stuff? What kind of repertoire, what kind of origin does this music have? Because the first thing that popped to my mind is like this recycling or reusage of the same melodies that you're basically also having in on different sides of the conflict. That was not a short question. I'm gonna go to the second one. Could you tell? I mean, you're kind of trying not to do this, but this is pure curiosity. What about the music of, quote unquote, music of shaheeds and nasheeds that were also used by what you also called like during the Islamization process of it? Could you tell us something more? And did you also come across of it, and also the influence on the patriotic songs themselves? Thank you so much again.
Thank you for your questions. I will be short because we are tight on time. About music production itself, music was all newly composed, not in the sense of a newly composed folk music, which was also a genre that music was composed. But what was really interesting was that there were some exceptions. For example, Jedna Sjedina by Dino Merlin, which was then a national anthem, was an old Sevdalinka. But from that, all other songs that I analyzed and that artistic units made were actually newly made, especially for this period, for the need that they had. And the basic genres were, like I already mentioned, newly composed folk music, traditional music, genre Sevdalinka, and some examples were also really rock songs, which in one way I thought maybe they were like referring to the visit of Iron Maiden in Sarajevo, because there were some like metal scenes or metal melodies, but I don't think that was the case. It was just like what people like to do, what kind of music did they like to listen in that time. But what I noticed that it was different, for example, in Serbian and Croatian music, or in of this time, where they really liked to use old Chetnik or old Ustasha songs and just to add new lyrics. But I didn't sense that this was the case in Bosnian patriotic songs. Referring to your second question, if I understood you correctly, you wanted to know more about the songs about Shahidi?
The Islamic war songs that were kind of part of the Islamization, that especially were noticeable in the Third Corps, the so-called Muslim Brigade and all that.
Yeah,
and that is also what, especially now, like in the reception of it 30 years later, you also see or hear these songs on the internet, much more actually than some of the stuff that you showed us today, which is excellent.
Yeah, I found this really interesting because whenever I mention the Third Corps from Zenica, everybody thinks in the same breath about the 7th Muslim Brigade, and there's always a question if there were any connections, any cooperations, but the artistic units of the Third Corps never really used or performed their songs. There was just songs about Shahidi, about the fallen soldiers, about mother crying on the grave, mourning their losses. And also in cultural life in Zenica, all the interviewees always pointed out that the 7th Muslim Brigade was always on the side, and their music and their religion didn't influence everyday life and everyday cultural life in Zenica. But yes, I agree with you that today on the internet, on YouTube, you can find a lot of a lot of songs were definitely more Islamic oriented than they were during the war.
And it's about the context, of course. I have another hand.
Thank you for your presentation. Mojca Piškor from Zagreb Academy of Music. I wanted to ask you about the level and status of these tapes, because these were the times of audio cassette tapes. And when we talk about Croatian examples, which I know you are familiar with because you were at the Institute in Zagreb, there was this underground alternative and very nationalistic repertoire being circulated on homemade audio tapes. And then there was the official music of the homeland ward, which was done through the national television station and these kinds of productions. What is the status of these cassettes that you analyzed? And is there this underground more problematic or difficult heritage of the war?
Thank you for your question. Yeah, the tapes that I got were all from the private archives from my interviewees. I definitely do believe that this underground scene of more nationalistic music did exist in Sarajevo and all over Bosnia and Herzegovina during the war. But all of my interviewees always pointed out that no, we are not nationalistic, we are patriotic. There was always, although in academic terms this might be also a little bit disputable, what's the difference between nationalism and patriotism? But my interviewees always pointed out, no, we are patriotic, we are making patriotic songs that makes us feel better. We do not compose or we do not perform any nationalistic songs. So sadly, while I was doing field work, I never got the chance to find any of those nationalistic songs or videotapes, but I'm definitely sure that they existed.
Okay, please. We are very glad that this presentation actually required a lot of answers.
Amila Ramović, Sarajevo. The question, we talked about this before, and I know many of the things you great research. I love it. It kind of brings me back to my childhood. Sounds like home. But the question, it just occurred to me, did you speak with the main showbiz stars, people who were showbiz stars before the war, like in the 80s, famous people like Hanka Paldum, Dino Merlin and others, and Tifa, Mladen Vojšić, Tifa and others who were in this context? And how did they perceive their roles? Because some musicians there, and like sound people and other, were not, famous. But they were famous, and after the war I remember that some of them had some problems in terms of, selling tickets in Serbia and Croatia, and there were awful things talked about in Serbian propaganda, especially about Hanka Paldum and Davorin Popović. And I remember that there were some musicians, like accordion players who were originally from Serbia, but they stayed in Sarajevo and worked for this unit, and then later came back home. Did you manage to gather anything about this follow-up? How did those people, especially these big showbiz stars and musicians and soloists, how do they see it now? Are some of them, trying to avoid talking about it now, or maybe did you manage to speak to them, and what were their memories?
Well, sadly, I didn't had a chance to speak to any of them while I was talking with Hanka Paldum. While I was in Sarajevo, she was always somewhere. Dino Merlin never responded to my emails, my requests, the same as Tifa. But I did interview Nazif Gliva, who was also a very big fish before the war. Yeah, he got this position of, yes, I was famous before, I'm famous now, or I'm talking about the war period, but now I'm nobody, everybody forgotten what I have done for this country, not from just the majority or a lot of patriotic songs that he recorded. But what my interviewees told me was, for example, not the envy or jealousy, but they were like saying, yeah, all those important musicians were just showing off. They never did anything. They never performed anywhere. We were the ones who were going through the tunnel, performed everywhere. Hanka never go anywhere, although there are videos where she performed, so that's not entirely true what interviewees said. But I really wanted to interview all of those, but never had the chance.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I can guess who told you that, but doesn't matter.
Thank you, Petra, one more time. It's not an academic thing from me, moderator, but I'm really, really glad to invite and to announce as the first exposé ever. And yeah, that's what I wanted to ask, to encourage. Aida Ađović, member of the Musicological Society. Something else you would like to say?
Master of Musicology, maybe.
Yeah. And this is her first participation at the scientific conference, and really, really it is nice to introduce you. Please, your expose is titled The Swan Song of a Generation, the expansion of the alternative rock scene in besieged Sarajevo, and I'm so happy that this topic will also hear so many young people from Sarajevo, our students as well, about the alternative rock scene in Sarajevo. Please, Alma.
Thank you, thank you, Professor Bakić, for this introduction. Before I start with my presentation, I just want to say that I'm very honored to be part of this four-day celebration of this important anniversary of the Musicological Society. And also I'm very glad to meet all of you after our online communication during the last few months. To be honest, I'm a little bit nervous, and as Professor Bakić already told, this is my first expose on the musicological conference, so I decided to present my paper in Bosnian, and I apologize for that to all of you who may be expected to hear all of this in English. So now I'm going to switch in Bosnian. Okay, I will start now. Ovako, moje današnje izlaganje je zapravo rezultat mog master istraživanja o sarajevskoj rock sceni za vrijeme opsade. Generalno, danas ću govoriti samo o tom segmentu o alternativnoj sceni. Naime, htjela bih reći da sam moj master rad realizovala uz pomoć i zapravo uz podršku i usmjeravanje moje mentorice, profesor dr. Fatime Hadžić. Kao primarni izvori današnjeg izlaganja poslužili su prije svega objavljeni članci u dnevnom listu Oslobođenje koji je od 1992. godine do 1995. izlazilo svaki dan, što je meni bilo nevjerovatno kada sam došla do te spoznaje, da u takvim okolnostima se štampa na svakodnevnoj bazi. A osim toga, vrlo značajni su mi za produbljivanje ove priče i za proširivanje nekih znanja u ovom periodu su intervjui sa ključnim akterima muzičkog života u ratnom Sarajevu, ali i radijskim urednicima koje ću i pominjati kroz svoju prezentaciju. Početak opsade koja je trajala 1425 dana uz konstantno granatiranje i destrukciju infrastrukturnih temelja grada značajno je utjecalo na transformaciju muzičke slike Sarajeva, jednog od ključnih centara nekada bivše Jugoslavije i uporišta njene popularne muzike. Brojni predstavnici scene prepoznatljive kao sarajevska pop-rock škola koja je svoje zlatno doba dostigla tokom 80. godina prošlog vijeka napustili su grad. Iako se u sferi popularne kulture u opkoljenom Sarajevu isprepliču različito profilisani narativi i njihove funkcije, o kojim je nešto i govorila Petra Hamer o ovoj patriotskoj i željela bih reći, to sam na početku zaboravila, a htjela sam pomenuti zato što i tu vrlo značajna su mi bila istraživanja upravo Petre Hamer i u mom radu. Osim te, kao što sam rekla, čvrsto su se pozicionirale dvije protuteže. Kao uslovno rečeno muzički mainstream plasiran na državnim medijima, ustoličen je repertoar utemeljen na patriotskom naboju kojim će se prikloniti većina preostalih ranije afirmisanih predstavnika sarajevske muzičke scene. Njihov rad tokom prve polovine 90-ih počinje odražavati novonastalu situaciju i staje u službu odbrane grada. Stoga je njihov angažman pretežno usmjeren na komponovanje i izvođenje patriotske obojene muzike. Kao antipod ovoj struji i nasljeđu sarajevske pop-rock škole generalno, iz undergrounda izbija beskompromisna bujica alternativnih demo bendova, čiji generator bio kosmopolitski nastrojeni Radio Zid. Primarno značenje pojma alternativno odnosi se na autentično, eklektično i beskompromisno stvaralaštvo van komercijalnih tokova. U skladu s tim, u bosansko-hercegovačkom ratnom kontekstu, u kojem je formirano više od 30 demo bendova, alternativni izraz podrazumijevao je društveno i politički angažovane tekstove u zvučnim aranžmanima koji su se referisali na globalne žanrovske tendencije. Najveću ulogu u afirmaciji sarajevske alternativne muzike imao je Radio Zid. Ovaj nezavisni medij osnovan je 1992. godine na inicijativu Zdravka Grebe i pozicionirao se kao protuteža državnim medijima koji su dominantno djelovali u službi održavanja patriotskog morala u javnom prostoru. Isključujući svaki sadržaj kreiran kao afirmacija militarizma, njegujući ideje građanskog duha i prepoznavši kulturu kao ispravan vid pružanja otpora ratnoj destrukciji, program Radija Zid kreiran je za sve društvene intelektualne krugove, dominantno plasirajući originalne i tematski raznolike kulturne i obrazovne sadržaje. U skladu s tim, Radio Zid je suprotstavljajući se dehumanizacijskim stavovima i metodama agresora s jedne, te dnevnoj politici i patriotskom narativu s druge strane, značajan prostor ustupao afirmaciji urbane underground nekomercijalne kulture. Jedan od ključnih segmenata programa koji je korespondirao sa aktuelnostima u svijetu bile su muzičke emisije sa urednicima u kasnim tinejdžerskim i ranim 20. godinama. Njihovim sadržajem intenzivirana je lokalna scena mladih alternativnih bendova, te su istovremeno formirani moralni i estetski svjetonazori generacije koje je odrastala u gradu pod opsadom. Informacije o globalnim muzičkim aktuelnostima do redakcije su dopirale posredstvom satelitskog prenosa programa svjetskih televizija, odakle su presnimavali singlove, a ponekad i cijele albume. Ipak, muzički urednici su uspjeli sakupiti obimnu diskografsku kolekciju zahvaljujući naklonosti stranih novinara, međunarodnih organizacija i pojedinaca koji su prepoznali značaj angažmana ove radio stanice. Kao najznačajnija muzička emisija istakla se No Sleep Till sa segmentom demo top lista gdje su promovisani mladi demo bendovi koji su uprkos nedostatku elementarnih uslova neumorno snimali na kasetofonima improvizovanim varijantama studija u skloništima i podrumima i svoj materijal slali ovoj radio stanici. Predstavljajući jedan ili dva sastava sedmično, urednici ove emisije generisali su lokalnu alternativnu scenu. Novoformirani sastavi su se u svom izrazu oslanjali na savremene muzičke pravce, pa je sarajevska alternativna scena okupila predstavnike različitog žanrovskog usmjerenja. uključujući hardcore izraz, punk, hard rock, metal, techno, rap i brojne druge srodne, ali i različite podžanrove, alternativne i naravno grunge koji je, ja se neću sjećati, ali možda vi, bio u prvoj polovini 90-ih globalno poznat žanr. I sve ove zapravo alternativne struje je sarajevska omladina koja je živjela u potpunoj fizičkoj pa i donekle psihološkoj izolaciji otkrivale ove tendencije kroz program Radija Zid. Na ovaj način članovi demo bendova su pružali otpor provincijalizaciji njihovog okruženja i vojnom obruču koji ih istovremeno guši i podstica u njihov angažman. S namjerom da dopru do međunarodne publike i dokažu da uprkos izolaciji uzrokovanoj ratnim okolnostima i dalje pripadaju civilizaciji, svoje tekstove često pišu na engleskom jeziku. Agresivni izraz i oštri, često samo ironični cinični stihovi korespondirali su s opštim beznađem tog vremena. Brojni članovi sarajevskih bendova koji su nastajali i djelovali u podrumima i skloništima bez elementarnih uslova za rad stali su u fizičku odbranu grada i mnogi od njih su stupili u redove armije Republike Bosne i Hercegovine, zbog čega su pretežno svirali u pauzama između smjena na frontu. U takvim okolnostima muzika postaje oblik eskapizma i sredstvo artikulacije samodestruktivne energije akumulirane kroz traumatična iskustva. Njihov agresivni izraz, kako i sami tvrde, bio je refleksija bujice i bijesa koji zbog svoje sirovosti i intenziteta nije mogao izroditi materijal baladnog ili patriotskog karaktera. Potreba za transcendiranjem užasa svakodnevnice rezultirala je ponovnim pokretanjem koncertne aktivnosti tokom 1993. godine, čiji je kontinuitet koliko je bilo moguće u ratnim uslovima ponovo uspostavljen 1994. godine. Svirke su pretežno organizovane u sarajevskim kultnim klubovima Sloga i Obala, a s obzirom na nestašicu električne energije, ishod svih dešavanja bio je neizvjestan. Uprkos spomenutim poteškoćama i ograničenjima, aktivnost sarajevske ratne alternativne scene kulminirala je kultnim koncertom Rock Under the Siege. Ovim događajem koji je upriličen 14. januara 1995. godine u pomenutoj Slogi dosegnut je vrhunac uspona alternativnog muzičkog izraza u gradu pod opsadom. Program su osmislili urednici demo top liste izabravši 14 najreprezentativnijih od blizu 40 tada aktivnih demo bendova u gradu, čije su izvedbe tom prilikom snimljene i zabilježene na CD-u Rock Under the Siege, koji uprkos nespretnoj realizaciji vremenom poprimio antologijske razmjere. Sada bih voljela da poslušamo neke primjere. Tu vidite ovdje popis, tu je zapravo 13 bendova, 14. bend zove se Livija i on se nije našao na ovoj kompilaciji zato zbog tehničkih razloga, prosto njihova izvedba nije dobro snimljena. I sada predlažem da poslušamo inserte zapravo iz pjesama koje su uživo izvedene u Slogi te januarske večeri 1995. godine. Radi se o dva benda, to su Protesti Sikter, možda dva najreprezentativnija benda iz ovog perioda koji su i preživjeli zapravo taj ratni period i značajnu popularnost imali i u poslijeratnom periodu, ali ni jedan ni drugi bend više ne postoje. Protest tu i tamo u nekoj drugoj postavi, ali su svakako značajni za sarajevsku scenu. Sada ćemo čuti pjesmu Sarajevo Feeling benda Protest, koji je u poslijeratnom periodu stekao kao punk band status sarajevskih Sex Pistolsa. I po tekstu vidite da i čućete da je ovo dosta onako samoironičan tekst koji je onako na vrlo duhovit, ali istovremeno tragičan način, govori o životu omladine, ali i drugih stanovnika Sarajeva.
Hoćemo li Sarajevo Feeling?
idemo dalje jer smo malo i vrijeme probili. Sada ćemo čuti pjesmu Siktera koja se zove Pain in Brain, koja je kasnije snimljeni spot za ovu pjesmu, koju radila zapravo ekipa evropskog MTV-a koji je djelovao, koji i djeluje i dalje na prostoru Evrope. Rađen je u saradnji sa sarajevskim rediteljem Harisom Paševićem i nećemo vidjeti tu sad insert jer mi je bilo interesantnije da čujem ali uživo audio snimak iz sloge. Ali je taj spot emitovan zapravo u večernjim satima MTV-a zato što navodno zbog sadržaja i videa i pjesme je bio imaju uznemirujuće kadrove zbog čega kao nije bilo neprimjereno, nego nije bilo dobro da se emituju u dnevnim terminima. Sada ćemo čuti ovu pjesmu.
Jedna ljubavna poema. Pjesma je o tome kako mene boli moj mozak. Okay. Sarajevo. Yeah. This is a true story about a me and a girl. It's so fucking sad when you love somebody that she doesn't care. And then you get a still in your head. It pains, it aches, it hurts. And I call it everything I do to real is a pessimism, it's a kind of emotion, big explosions all around my. Nothing's right, all is red, nothing's good, all is bad. I like to feel sad, but I can't only show up cause my body burns. My ass is shaking, the pain is taking me. Pain ain't plain, it's insane and it's the brain. Yes, it's the brain, my poor little got a pain. Pain in my brain.
Predlažem da idemo dalje. Iako su nakon koncerta Rock Under the Siege uslijedili njeni svijetli trenuci, poput vrlo uspješnih gostovanja bendova u velikim evropskim centrima, jenjavanjem rata postalo je očigledno da počinje njeno rasipanje. Dolaskom mira i povratkom brojnih pop muzičara u Sarajevo, komercijalni aspekt muzike ponovo isplivava u prvi plan, što je anticipirao i Karim Zaimović, urednik i voditelj radija Zid, koji je dobro poznat u Sarajevu i kao pisac naučno-fantastičkih priča, zapravo priča alternativne historije. On je u svom osvrtu na koncert Rock Under the Siege koji možete vidjeti njegov zaključak na slajdu, na neki način anticipira ono što će doći svojim pitanjem, da li će ovaj koncert zaista biti početak ljepšeg muzičkog doba za Sarajevo ili labuđi pjev jedne generacije. I sada bih da zaključim. Dominantni pokretač sarajevske ratne alternativne scene bila je nasušna potreba za izražavanjem oslobođena prijeratnog, ali i poslijeratnog mehanizma komercijalizacije. Stoga se kao jedan od primarnih motiva i funkcije djelovanja ističe konstruisanje prividne normalnosti i očuvanje mentalnog i emotivnog balansa. Istovremeno rock je postao utočište, jedan od vidova eskapizma. Uloga koncerata u gradu pod opsadom često je poprimala ritualne razmjere. Okupljanje ljudi sličnog senzibiliteta koji su svakodnevno prolazili kroz zastrašujuće situacije kreiralo je osjećaj zajedništva te vremenskog i prostornog izmještanja. Stoga je rock muzika njegovana u sarajevskim klubovima postala kanal za artikulaciju individualnih trauma koji su dijeljenjem i poistovjećivanjem prerasli u zajedničko iskustvo. Takva vrsta identifikacije obilježila je formativne godine omladine proživljene u opkoljenom Sarajevu, pa alternativni rock postaje glasan generacijski glas. Stanje krize ogoljuje društvene kapacitete i dovodi u pitanje kulturološke vrijednosti na kojima počiva sredina pogođena katastrofom. Spremnost na očuvanje dostojanstva potvrđuju urbanu esenciju grada, a sarajevski rok, bez potrebe da se svidi i zaradi, uspije sveden na osnovne funkcije opstanka, bio je jedan od ključnih nosilaca vrijednosti civilizovanog svijeta.
In order to respect the next session, but we are late 1 hour, but 1 hour all day, the special session of 25th anniversary of the Musicological Society. Maybe any comments for the end, because I'm not a hidden panelist and I wouldn't like to conclude anything. All these 3 exposés are conclusions by themselves. So if there are no questions, I would like to warmly thank you for being with all of us, and I wish you a good continuation of your work. Thank you very much.